Commander Alan Russell of the Earth Alliance vessel, Dauntless, was having a terrible morning. The coffee synthesizer had broken down for the third time this week. The artificial gravity kept fluctuating between 0.8 and 1.2 Earth standard. His head pounded with a dull ache that refused to go away. "Status report," he mumbled as he walked onto the bridge, hoping someone had fixed the coffee machine while he wasn't looking. "Sir, we've detected an unknown vessel at the edge of the system," Lieutenant Greg Barnes reported from his station. "They're approaching fast." Alan sighed and rubbed his temples. "Any attempts at communication?" "Not yet, sir. We've been broadcasting standard greeting protocols, but no response." Alan checked the time. 0600 hours. Too early for this kind of problem. His stomach growled in protest. He'd planned to grab breakfast before starting his shift, but this unexpected situation had pulled him directly to the bridge. "Keep trying, and someone please tell me the mess hall synthesizer is working." Greg shifted uncomfortably. All food systems are down for maintenance, sir. Chief Engineer Patel said something about recalibrating the protein sequencers." Alan closed his eyes briefly. No coffee, no breakfast, and now first contact with an unknown alien species. This day was getting better by the minute. "Sir," Greg's voice jumped half an octave. "They're hailing us." "On screen," Alan ordered, straightening his uniform and trying to look more awake than he felt. The view screen flickered to life, revealing a reptilian face with emerald scales and yellow slitted eyes. The alien had a bony ridge that extended from its forehead to the back of its head, and its neck was adorned with colorful frills that expanded and contracted as it breathed. "I am High Commander Zex Talon of the Craxian Empire," the alien announced, its voice surprisingly melodic despite its fierce appearance. "You have entered territory claimed by the Great Clutch." Alan cleared his throat. "I am Commander Alan Russell of the Earth Alliance vessel Dauntless. We weren't aware this system was claimed by any civilization. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic relations." The alien's frills fluttered in what Alan guessed was amusement or possibly contempt. "Earth Alliance? We have not heard of your kind." Zex Talon leaned closer to the screen, studying Alan with those unnerving yellow eyes. "You appear soft, malnourished even. Are all primates from your world so weak?" Several bridge officers tensed at the insult. Alan felt his empty stomach clench but kept his expression neutral. He'd been trained for first contact scenarios, though none of the simulations had prepared him for doing it on an empty stomach, with a caffeine withdrawal headache. "Appearances can be deceiving, High Commander," Alan replied evenly. "We would welcome the opportunity to learn more about the Craxian Empire and share information about Earth and the Alliance." Zex Talon made a clicking sound that the Universal Translator couldn't interpret. "Perhaps. Our records show 17 habitable planets in this sector. How many does your Alliance claim?" "We don't claim planets, High Commander. We establish colonies only on uninhabited worlds or through peaceful agreements with native species." This seemed to confuse the alien. Its frills contracted close to its neck. "Strange concept. Territory must be claimed and defended. This is the way of all advanced civilizations." Before Alan could respond, Lieutenant Barnes spoke up urgently. "Sir, we're detecting weapons charging on the Craxian vessel." Alan tensed. "High Commander, is there a problem? We've given no cause for hostilities." "No hostilities, Commander Russell. Merely a demonstration. Your vessel is significantly smaller than ours. We wish to establish the natural order early in our relationship." Alan's diplomatic response was cut short when another officer called out, "Commander, the science vessel Curiosity is approaching from the planet's far side. They're running atmospheric tests and don't appear to have noticed the Craxian ship." The Craxian leader's posture changed immediately. Its frills extended to full display, turning a bright orange color. "You have another vessel in this system. You dare to surround a Craxian warship?" "High Commander, the Curiosity is a science vessel. They're unarmed and—" A flash of light on the view screen interrupted him as the Craxian ship fired what appeared to be warning shots toward the small Earth science vessel. The shots missed, but Commander Russell's already thin patience snapped. His growling stomach, pounding head, and now a direct threat to fellow humans combined into a perfect storm of irritation. "High Commander Zexatalon," Alan said, his voice dropping dangerously low. "I strongly suggest you power down your weapons, immediately. The Curiosity is a civilian science vessel with 23 unarmed researchers aboard. Any hostile action against them will be considered an act of war against the Earth Alliance." The Craxian seemed surprised by the sudden change in Alan's demeanor. "You speak boldly for one so undernourished. Do humans often make threats they cannot enforce?" Alan didn't smile as he replied. "That was not a threat. It was a statement of fact. And while we may appear soft to you, there's something you should understand about humans." Lieutenant Barnes had already quietly ordered battle stations, and Alan could see the weapon systems coming online. The Dauntless might be smaller than the Craxian vessel, but it was no pushover. "Enlighten me, Commander," Zexatalon said with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. "Humans are at their most dangerous when they're hungry and irritated, and thanks to your timing, you've managed to catch me and my entire crew before our morning meal." The alien's frills fluttered again, but this time in what seemed like confusion. "Food consumption schedules affect your species' combat readiness? Fascinating. In Craxian culture, warriors fast before battle to sharpen their senses. Different biology, different responses," Alan said, feeling his crew tensing around him, ready for whatever came next. "For us, missing meals makes us less diplomatic." "A curious weakness to admit," Zexatalon observed. "It's not a weakness," Alan replied, allowing himself a small smile. "It's a warning." At that moment, the Craxian vessel fired another shot, this one coming much closer to the Curiosity. "Lieutenant Barnes, target their weapons systems. Lieutenant Olivia, get the Curiosity out of there." "Everyone else, hang on to something," Alan ordered, his voice now cold and precise despite his hunger-induced headache. The Dauntless moved with surprising speed for a vessel its size, positioning itself between the science ship and the Craxian vessel. "High Commander," Alan said, "I'm giving you one chance to stand down. Otherwise, you're about to learn firsthand why no one in the galaxy should pick a fight with humans, especially before lunch." Zexatalon's eyes narrowed, and its frills extended to their full intimidation display. "Your vessel is half our size, Commander. Your threats are as empty as your stomach appears to be." Alan sighed and nodded to Lieutenant Barnes. "Fire." The ensuing exchange would go down in galactic history as the breakfast incident, the first of many lessons the galaxy would learn about humanity's peculiar relationship with meal schedules and combat effectiveness. Lieutenant Olivia Daniels watched the recording of the breakfast incident for the 5th time. She studied Commander Russell's face as he gave the order to fire on the Craxian vessel. The calm focus in his eyes despite his obvious hunger-induced irritability was something she recognized all too well. "Play it again," she told the computer system in the training room of Outpost Gamma 7. 3 weeks had passed since the first contact with the Craxians had gone sideways. What had started as a simple misunderstanding had quickly spiraled into a tense standoff between Earth Alliance and the Craxian Empire. The diplomatic channels remained open, barely, but intelligence suggested the reptilian species was not the forgiving type. "Lieutenant, the squad is ready," Sergeant Joe Miller said from the doorway. Olivia nodded and turned off the recording. "How are they doing today?" "Hungry, tired, and annoyed, just like you ordered." She smiled slightly. "Perfect." The training room door slid open to reveal 12 men and women in combat gear. They stood at attention, but Olivia could see the signs of controlled discomfort on their faces. Some had dark circles under their eyes. Others were subtly shifting their weight from one foot to another. This was the Odd Hours Squad, Earth's first interspecies combat unit. For 3 years, Olivia had been training them to adapt to alien biologies and combat styles. Their specialty was operating under conditions most species would find unbearable. "At ease," Olivia said. "I assume none of you have eaten since yesterday?" "No, ma'am," they replied in unison, a few stomachs audibly growling in protest. "Good, because neither have our new friends." She activated the holographic display in the center of the room, A detailed image of a Craxian warrior rotated slowly in the air. The Craxians evolved on a planet with irregular food availability. They can go weeks without eating if necessary. This makes them dangerous opponents, but it also gives us an advantage. Sergeant Miller raised an eyebrow. An advantage, ma'am? Yes. While they can survive without food longer than humans, their bodies handle hunger differently. We get irritable, focused, and aggressive when hungry. They become more conservative, more cautious, and less creative in their thinking. Private Sam Garcia spoke up. So we're training to fight them while hungry because that's when the playing field is most level. Better than level, Olivia said. Based on the data we've gathered, a hungry human is actually more unpredictable and adaptable than a hungry Craxian. They save energy by falling back on instinct and training. We get cranky and start improvising. The squad chuckled. They'd all been selected for this unit partly because of how they handled physical discomfort. Where most humans became less effective when hungry or tired, these soldiers became more focused, more determined. Today's exercise simulates a Craxian tactical unit attempting to capture a human outpost during what they call the rest cycle, basically our lunch hour. Intelligence suggests they believe this is when we're most vulnerable. Before she could continue, the outpost alarm suddenly blared to life. Attention all personnel. Unknown vessels approaching. Combat stations, this is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Olivia exchanged a quick glance with Sergeant Miller. Well, squad, looks like the training exercise just became a field test. By the time they reached the command center, the situation was clear. 3 Craxian assault ships had dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Outpost Gamma 7. They weren't broadcasting any messages, and they were moving into attack formation. Captain Frank Winters looked up as Olivia entered. Lieutenant, good timing. We've got company. How many? Initial scans show about 100 Craxian troops on those ships. They're positioning to board the station. Olivia quickly assessed the situation. Outpost Gamma 7 had a normal complement of 30 personnel, most of them scientists and engineers. With her 12-person squad, they were outnumbered more than 2 to 1 by trained Craxian warriors. Captain, request permission to handle the defense. Captain Winters looked skeptical. Your squad against 100 Craxians? Trust me, sir, they picked the wrong time to attack. She glanced at the station clock. It was 12:15 hours, right in the middle of lunch break. Most of the station personnel had been in the middle of their meal when the alarm sounded. 10 minutes later, the first Craxian boarding pod attached to the outer hull of the station. The aliens had clearly studied human outpost designs. They breached near what should have been the least defended section, the recreation area that doubled as the mess hall during lunch hour. What they didn't know was that the odd-hour squad was waiting for them, and they were all overdue for a meal. The first 3 Craxians through the breach were met with surprising resistance. Private Garcia, who had missed both breakfast and lunch, moved with unusual speed for someone his size. He disarmed the lead Craxian before the alien could even raise its weapon. Across the mess hall, Corporal Linda Perez had flipped a cafeteria table for cover and was using a serving tray as an improvised shield. Her aim was deadly precise as she took down 2 more invaders. They move in predictable patterns, Olivia observed over the squad's communication channel. Watch their tails. They telegraphed their movements. The Craxians fought with discipline and coordination, but they seemed genuinely confused by the humans' erratic tactics. When the aliens attempted to establish a defensive position, the humans simply ignored conventional combat doctrine and charged right through it. They expected us to be sluggish during our feeding time, Sergeant Miller said as he wrestled a Craxian to the ground. They don't understand human biology at all. Olivia spotted an opportunity. The Craxians were maintaining tight formation, following what appeared to be standard battle protocols. She quickly ordered half her squad to create a diversion while she led the rest through the ventilation system to flank the invaders. 3 hours into the battle, the tide had turned decisively. The remaining Craxians retreated to their ships, leaving behind 20 of their wounded and 30 dead. The humans had suffered injuries, but no casualties. As the alien vessels pulled away from the station, Olivia gathered her squad in the now destroyed mess hall. Good work, everyone, she said, surveying the tired but triumphant faces. Now let's finally get some food. Private Garcia grinned as he helped a wounded comrade to a chair. You know what they say, Lieutenant? Never pick a fight with humans, especially before lunch. The squad finished in unison. Captain Winters approached, looking both impressed and slightly bewildered. I've already sent a report to Earth Alliance Command, Lieutenant. They'll want a full briefing on how 12 humans managed to repel 100 Craxian warriors. Olivia nodded. I'll prepare the report, sir, but first my squad needs to eat. We get cranky when we're hungry. Very cranky. As they finally sat down to their much-delayed meal, news arrived that the Craxians had launched similar attacks on 2 other human outposts. Both attacks had also occurred during local lunch hours. Both had failed spectacularly. The galaxy was learning an important lesson about humanity, one missed meal at a time. Senior Ambassador Paul Martinez stared at his schedule for the Galactic Conclave with growing dismay. He had been in space for most of his career, but he had never experienced anything quite as frustrating as galactic diplomatic protocols. They scheduled our session with the Craxians at what time? He asked his assistant Ben Kelly. Ben checked the glowing tablet again. At 2780 Galactic Standard Time. That's 11:45 Earth Time, sir. Paul groaned and rubbed his forehead. Right. Before lunch. Again. The Galactic Conclave had brought together 17 spacefaring civilizations to discuss the escalating conflict between humans and Craxians. 2 months had passed since the attacks on the human outposts, and tensions were high. The other species were concerned about the potential for a full-scale war that could disrupt trade routes and alliances. Paul had been eating at odd hours for days, trying to adjust to the Conclave's schedule. Most species did not share humanity's eating patterns. Some, like the jellyfish-like Aurelians, absorbed nutrients continuously through their skin. Others, like the silicon-based Draconites, only needed to feed once every 30 Earth days. Is there any chance of moving our session to after lunch? Paul asked, already knowing the answer. I tried, sir. The schedule coordinator says it's impossible. All 17 species have different biological needs, and this was the best compromise. Paul nodded resignedly. And I suppose the protein bars are still all we have? Ben grimaced. The ship's synthesizer can't replicate Earth food properly. These were all we could bring that would last the journey. The Earth diplomatic team had been surviving on stale protein bars for 3 consecutive days. The bars provided basic nutrition, but did nothing to satisfy actual hunger. Paul's stomach had been growling almost continuously since their arrival at the Conclave. Ambassador, there's something else, Ben said hesitantly. I've been reviewing the scheduling records, and I don't think this timing is an accident. Paul raised an eyebrow. Explain. The Vrexians requested the schedule change yesterday. They specifically asked for our meeting with the Craxians to be moved earlier. The Vrexians were ancient enemies of the Craxians. Both species evolved on neighboring planets and had been fighting over resources for thousands of years before discovering other intelligent life. While they maintained a fragile peace now, they never missed an opportunity to undermine each other. So the Vrexians deliberately scheduled us to face the Craxians when we'd be at our hungriest. Paul mused. They've been watching us. They know how hunger affects human diplomacy. After the breakfast incident and the defense of Outpost Gamma 7, everyone's talking about human hunger responses, Ben confirmed. Some species find it fascinating. Others are terrified. Paul stood up and straightened his formal diplomatic uniform. Well, if they want to see hungry humans in action, we might as well give them a show. The Galactic Conclave chamber was enormous, with seating arranged in a full circle. Each species had its own section adapted to their biological needs. The Draconites sat on heated stone platforms. The Aurelians floated in small tanks of nutrient-rich liquid. The Vrexians perched on high stools that accommodated their long, spindly limbs. In the center of the chamber was the speaker's platform, currently occupied by High Diplomat Zex Kralos of the Craxian Empire. The Craxian looked similar to High, Commander Zex Talon from the breakfast incident, but with more elaborate head frills that indicated higher rank. And so we asked the Conclave to censure the humans for their aggressive expansion into clearly marked Craxian territory, Zex Kralos was saying as Paul entered the chamber. Their unprovoked attacks on our peaceful vessels demonstrate that they are too emotionally unstable for galactic society. Paul's stomach growled loudly as he took his place on the speaker's platform. Several translator devices picked up the sound and amplified it across the chamber. A few of the more sensitive species visibly recoiled. "The human appears to be malfunctioning," one of the Draconites observed. "No," Paul replied with a tight smile. "That's just my stomach reminding me that I haven't eaten a proper meal in 3 days while trying to accommodate this conclave's schedule." Zex Kralos's frills expanded in what Paul had learned was a sign of superiority. "As I was explaining, this demonstrates the human's biological weaknesses. They become irritable and irrational when their feeding schedules are disrupted. Such a species cannot be trusted with interstellar responsibilities." Paul took a deep breath, fighting against the hunger-induced irritation that threatened to overcome his diplomatic training. "High Diplomat Zex Kralos," he began. "While I appreciate your concern for our biological functions, I must correct several factual errors in your presentation." For the next 20 minutes, Paul systematically dismantled the Craxians' arguments. He presented evidence that the supposedly marked territory had no warning beacons. He showed footage of the Craxian ships firing first in every encounter. All while his stomach continued to protest audibly. The chamber grew increasingly uncomfortable as Paul's hunger diplomacy continued. Several species shifted nervously in their seats. The Vrexians looked simultaneously pleased at the Craxians' discomfort and alarmed at the humans' effectiveness. Furthermore, Paul continued, his voice taking on an edge that made even the silicon-based Draconites flinch. "The Craxian Empire has violated 3 separate provisions of the Galactic Non-Aggression Pact which they signed 200 years ago. We have the documentation right here." Zex Kralos's frills flattened against his neck, a sign of embarrassment or anger. "These accusations are outrageous. Humans cannot possibly understand the complex historical context of—" "Perhaps we don't," Paul interrupted, his patience finally snapping. "But what we do understand is that attacking people during their mealtimes is both strategically unwise and incredibly rude." The chamber fell silent. Even the translators seemed to hesitate. "Let me be clear," Paul continued, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm that reminded several observers of Commander Russell before the breakfast incident. "Humans are eager to join the galactic community. We respect your traditions, your territories, and your biological needs, but we expect the same courtesy in return." He glanced meaningfully at his empty stomach. "Perhaps we are too emotionally unstable for galactic society, but at least we understand the concept of a snack break." The Aurelian representative, a floating mass of luminescent tendrils, suddenly pulsed with light. "The human makes a valid point. This session has continued for 3.7 standard hours without nutritional accommodation for carbon-based delegates." The Vrexian representative looked alarmed as support for the human position grew. "This wasn't part of their plan. I propose," Paul said, seeing his opportunity, "an immediate recess so that all species can attend to their biological needs. And I further suggest that going forward, all negotiations take place after all participants have had their equivalent of a proper meal." The proposal spread through the chamber like a wave. Species after species indicated agreement. Even some of the Craxians looked relieved at the prospect of a break. For the first time in the conclave's long history, proceedings were recessed. Due to what would later be documented as cross-species nutritional considerations. As delegates filed out of the chamber, the Vrexian representative approached Paul. "Most impressive, Ambassador Martinez. We may have underestimated your species." Paul's stomach growled one final time. "A common mistake. But remember this. Hungry humans don't make good enemies or good negotiating partners. We prefer to be well-fed when making decisions that affect the galaxy." The resulting chaos of trying to accommodate 17 different species' nutritional needs simultaneously would lead to an unprecedented reform in conclave procedures. And the first step toward genuine understanding between humans and the rest of galactic society. Fleet Admiral Samantha Wright stood on the bridge of the Earth Alliance flagship, resolute, and watched the tactical display with narrowed eyes. The situation was worse than anyone had predicted. The Craxian armada had positioned itself around Europa, Jupiter's ice moon and home to humanity's largest off-world agricultural center. 73 Craxian warships formed a blockade that cut off the food supply for the entire Sol system. "How many ships do we have available?" she asked her second-in-command, Captain Ned Owens. 32 combat-ready vessels, Admiral. Another 15 are en route but won't arrive for at least 18 hours. Samantha nodded grimly. They were outnumbered more than 2-1. The Craxians had clearly been planning this move for weeks, perhaps even before the Galactic Conclave had attempted to negotiate peace.
What about the Europa colony? How long can they hold out?
"The Dome has emergency supplies for 2 weeks, Ned replied. "But if the Craxians decide to attack rather than just blockade, those defenses won't last long." Samantha felt her stomach rumble. She had been in back-to-back emergency meetings since 0400 hours when the Craxian fleet was first detected entering the system. It was now nearly noon, and she had yet to eat anything. "Send word to all ship captains," she said. "Meeting in the war room in 30 minutes. And tell the mess hall to prepare something quick that we can eat during the briefing." 25 minutes later, Samantha received bad news from the mess officer. "Admiral, I'm sorry, but the synthesizers are malfunctioning. We can offer nutrient pills, but real food will take at least 2 hours to prepare manually." Samantha sighed. "Just bring the pills to the war room." By the time the ship captains gathered, some in person, most as holograms from their own vessels, Samantha had nothing but stimulants and nutrient pills in her system. Her mind was sharp from the stimulants, but her empty stomach made her unusually direct. "The Craxians believe they've found our breaking point," she told the assembled officers. "By threatening the food supply of the entire Sol system, they think we'll back down from our territorial claims and accept their dominance." Captain Rita Diaz of the scout ship Swift spoke up. "Admiral, we've intercepted communications suggesting the Craxian battlemaster believes this blockade will avoid actual fighting. They think we'll surrender rather than risk our food supply." Samantha almost laughed. "They still don't understand humans at all, do they? How many of you have had breakfast today?" A quick survey revealed that over 70% of the captains had missed at least one meal due to the crisis. Nearly 30% were, like Samantha, running entirely on stimulants and nutrient pills. "Good," Samantha said with a dangerous smile. "Then we're in the perfect mood for this fight." She brought up the tactical display showing the Craxian formation around Europa. Their ships were arranged in a classic defensive pattern, designed to withstand attacks from any direction. It was a formation that had likely served the Craxians well for thousands of years. "The Craxian battle doctrine is over 12,000 years old," Samantha explained. "They've fought the same way for millennia because it works against conventional opponents. But they've never faced humans who've missed breakfast." The captains chuckled grimly. They all understood what she meant. The Craxians' military strength came from their rigid discipline and precise coordination. Human crews, especially hungry ones, could be unpredictable to the point of seeming irrational. "I'm authorizing what we'll call Operation Hangry," Samantha announced. "Here's the plan." The strategy she outlined was so counterintuitive and seemingly chaotic that several captains asked her to repeat parts of it. It violated multiple established fleet tactics and required timing so precise it seemed impossible. "To be clear, Admiral," Captain Diaz said, "you want the faster ships to charge straight at their center line, then scatter in 17 different directions at the last second, while the heavy cruisers approach from below the orbital plane in what will appear to be a suicidal position?" "Exactly," Samantha confirmed. "The Craxians follow their battle doctrine religiously. They won't be able to respond effectively to tactics this unconventional." "With all due respect, Admiral," one of the captains said, "this plan seems like something designed by someone who hasn't eaten all day." Samantha smiled thinly. "Precisely the point, Captain. That's our advantage." The human fleet moved out 30 minutes later. The smaller, faster ships formed a tight arrow formation and accelerated directly toward the center of the Craxian blockade. The larger vessels dropped below the orbital plane, seemingly exposing their weapons-light underbellies to enemy fire. On board the Craxian command ship, Battlemaster Zex Vorax watched in confusion as the human vessels approached. "They cannot be serious," he told his officers. "This attack formation violates basic tactical principles. Prepare to destroy their lead ships. The rest will retreat once they see our firepower. But just as the Craxian weapons locked onto the lead human vessels, the tight formation exploded outward in all directions. What had appeared to be a simple spearhead attack transformed into a chaotic swarm of ships moving in seemingly random patterns. The Craxian targeting systems, designed to track conventional attack formations, struggled to adapt. By the time they recalibrated, the human heavy cruisers had emerged from below and were already firing on the Craxian rear guard. Impossible, Zexvorax snarled. No rational commander would attempt such a maneuver. The risk is too great. What the Craxian battlemaster didn't understand was that hungry human commanders operated with a different definition of rational. On the engineering deck of the Resolute, Chief Engineer Frank Adams was solving an entirely different problem. He had been working through his lunch breaks for a week straight on a theoretical modification to the shield harmonics. If we invert the shield frequency and sync it with their weapons' energy signatures, he explained to his skeptical team, we might be able to create a cascading failure across their defensive grid. But sir, his assistant protested, the calculations would need to be perfect. One mistake and our own shields could collapse. Frank took a long sip of his triple-strength coffee substitute. Then we better not make any mistakes. The battle raged for 3 hours. The human fleet, outnumbered and outgunned, fought with a ferocity that shocked the Craxians. Ships performed maneuvers that Craxian military analysts would later describe as suicidal, irrational, and offensively unpredictable. When Chief Engineer Adams finally activated his shield modification across the fleet, the effect was immediate. Craxian shields began failing in sequence as their own weapons fire created a feedback loop through the precisely calibrated frequencies. How is this possible? Zexvorax demanded as system after system failed across his fleet. Their modifications violate the laws of shield dynamics. A junior officer, braver than most, spoke up. Reports indicate the human engineers have been working without breaks for days, sir. They appear to be what humans call hangry. 6 hours after the battle began, the Craxian armada retreated from Europa's orbit. 17 of their ships had been destroyed, and 39 suffered serious damage. The human fleet lost only 3 vessels, though many others were badly damaged. As Samantha Wright finally sat down to eat her long-delayed meal in the officer's mess, she received a transmission from Earth Alliance Command. Congratulations, Admiral, the message read. The Craxian Empire is requesting emergency peace talks. Their representative specifically asked that the negotiations be scheduled immediately after their midday feeding cycle and ours. Samantha smiled as she took her first bite of real food in almost 24 hours. The galaxy was finally learning an important lesson about humanity. 1 year after the breakfast incident, a sleek diplomatic vessel entered the orbit of Neutral Station Gamma, a massive space structure built specifically for intergalactic meetings. The station rotated slowly against the backdrop of stars, its various sections designed to accommodate the biological needs of 17 different spacefaring species. Captain Lisa Rodriguez watched through the viewport as her ship, the Dauntless, approached the docking bay. She had replaced Alan Russell as commander after he was promoted following the events that started the human-Craxian conflict. Now she carried the responsibility of representing Earth in these critical peace negotiations. Nervous, Captain? Asked Dr. Kate Nelson, the ship's chief science officer and expert on Craxian biology. A little, Lisa admitted. It's not every day you sit down with the leader of an empire you were at war with last month. The Craxian Supreme Imperator, Zex Galden, had traveled from their homeworld specifically for these negotiations. It was an unprecedented honor, and an indication of how seriously the Craxians now took the humans. As the Dauntless settled into its docking position, Lisa checked the time. The meeting was scheduled for 1300 hours, carefully chosen to be after both the human and Craxian mealtimes. Nobody wanted a repeat of the hunger-fueled incidents that had characterized their previous encounters. Is everything ready in the refreshment station? Lisa asked her communications officer. Yes, Captain. The special package from Earth arrived safely and has been prepared according to the instructions. Lisa nodded, satisfied. Good. Let's hope it helps break the ice. The neutral station's refreshment station was a marvel of intergalactic cooperation. Previously, diplomatic meetings had been held with little regard for the biological needs of different species. After Ambassador Martinez's famous speech at the Galactic Conclave, a new approach had been adopted. The refreshment station featured 17 different environmental chambers, each designed to allow a specific species to consume nutrients in their preferred manner. The chambers surrounded a central meeting room where representatives could gather after everyone had eaten. Lisa and her small team entered the human chamber, where a table was set with familiar Earth foods. Across the station, in a warmer, more humid chamber, Supreme Imperator Zex Galden and his advisors were doing the same. Remember, Dr. Nelson reminded everyone as they ate, the Craxians see eating as a private, almost sacred activity. The fact that they agreed to eat at the same time as us, even in separate chambers, is a huge concession. Lisa nodded, savoring her meal. And we're about to push that boundary even further. 30 minutes later, both delegations entered the central meeting room. The Craxians, led by Supreme Imperator Zex Galden, were impressive figures, taller than the average human and covered in emerald scales. They moved with a predatory grace. Zex Galden's head frills were larger and more colorful than any they had seen before, indicating his supreme status. Lisa stepped forward. Supreme Imperator, I am Captain Lisa Rodriguez of the Earth Alliance. Thank you for agreeing to these talks. The translator device captured her words and relayed them in the musical tones of the Craxian language. Zex Galden's yellow eyes studied her carefully before he responded. Captain Rodriguez, your species has proven interesting. Our military analysts are still trying to understand how 32 ships defeated 73 of our finest vessels. Lisa allowed herself a small smile. Perhaps after we sign the peace treaty, we can discuss military tactics over a meal. The Craxians' frills rippled in what Lisa had learned was their equivalent of cautious amusement. A bold suggestion, Captain. But first, let us address the reason for our meeting. The negotiations proceeded smoothly at first. Both sides had come prepared with concessions and clear objectives. The humans wanted recognition of their territorial rights and assurances against future aggression. The Craxians wanted face-saving measures and guarantees that human expansion would not threaten their existing colonies. After 2 hours of productive discussion, they reached the most difficult point: the status of disputed planets in the border region between their territories. These 7 worlds fall within the traditional hunting grounds of the Great Clutch, Zex Galden stated firmly. They have been ours for millennia. Yet you never established colonies there, Lisa countered. And our surveys show 3 of those planets have conditions perfect for human settlement. The room grew tense. This was the issue that could derail the peace process. Lisa glanced at her science officer, who gave her a subtle nod. Supreme Imperator, Lisa said, changing tactics. Before we continue this discussion, I'd like to offer you something from Earth. A gesture of cultural exchange. She signaled, and an aide brought forward a small container. Inside was something that had been carefully transported from Earth, a genuine homemade sandwich. The Craxian delegation's frills extended in surprise and confusion. Sharing food was not part of their diplomatic tradition. In fact, eating in front of other species was considered unusual in their culture. This is a simple human food, Lisa explained. We call it a sandwich. It's made with ingredients that our science team confirmed are compatible with Craxian biology. On Earth, sharing food is a way to build trust between potential friends. Zex Galden studied the offering with clear curiosity. After a moment of hesitation that seemed to stretch forever, he reached out and took the sandwich. Your cultural rituals are unusual, he said. But we have learned that dismissing human customs can be unwise. With deliberate ceremony, the Supreme Imperator took a bite of the sandwich. The humans held their breath as he considered the taste. Then, to everyone's surprise, his frills expanded to their full display, showing vibrant colors that indicated pleasure. This is quite good, he admitted. The combination of textures is unlike anything in Craxian cuisine. The mood in the room shifted immediately. What followed was something unprecedented in galactic diplomatic history. a discussion of food preferences, cooking methods, and the cultural significance of shared meals across species. By the time they returned to the disputed planets issue, both sides were more relaxed and open to compromise. The resulting agreement, 3 planets for human settlement, 3 for Craxian preserves, and 1 to be jointly developed, satisfied both sides. The treaty, officially titled The Mutual Recognition of Physiological Requirements and Cultural Practices, became known throughout the galaxy as the Mealtime Treaty. Its most famous provision, Article 7, subsection C, stated that no species shall be required to engage in diplomatic, commercial, or military activities during their designated nutritional intake periods. As Captain Rodriguez and Supreme Imperator, Zex Galden signed the document. The Craxian leader made a final addition. At the bottom of the treaty, he wrote in his own language a line that would become famous throughout the galaxy. The universe has learned a valuable lesson. Never pick a fight with humans, especially before lunch. Lisa smiled as she read the addition. I think we've all learned that lesson, Supreme Imperator. Indeed, Zex Galden agreed, his frills displaying the colors of amused wisdom. And I have learned another important human concept as well. What's that? Lisa asked. The value of what you call snacks, the Craxian leader replied. Perhaps you could share the recipe for these sandwiches as part of our cultural exchange program. As word of the successful treaty spread throughout the galaxy, other species quickly adopted the human custom of scheduling important meetings after meals. Diplomatic incidents decreased by 63% in the following year, and in the mess hall of every Earth Alliance vessel, a new plaque was mounted bearing the words that had changed galactic politics forever. Never pick a fight with humans, especially before lunch.